How's it going, guys? If you're new to my channel, welcome. My name is Nick, and today I'm going to be talking about this one book that had a positive impact on my financial life, and I think it can truly transform yours if you're not familiar with the concepts that I'm about to talk about. But first of all, why should you even care about your financial future? Well, I found this one article on CNBC from 2018, and it actually said that 1 out of every 3 Americans actually has less than $5,000 saved for retirement. And if you didn't think that was crazy enough, the article also states that about 78% of Americans think that they are extremely concerned about their savings for retirement. Now, I'll link to this article in the description below, but for the meanwhile, we have to figure out why this is such a prevalent issue in today's society and how it can actually be prevented altogether. And so in this video, I'm going to be talking about the key concepts of Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki and why this book is so transformative in people's lives who need financial assistance or are looking to become rich and understand a little bit more about finances. So without further ado, let's talk about this book. Alright guys, so getting right into it with number 1, Robert Kiyosaki talks about how the rich don't work for money. Now you might think, obviously the rich have worked for money and they've worked very hard to get where they are, but they've worked very hard in a different manner than the middle class and the poor. Now most people have a 9-to-5 job that requires them to exchange time for money, and that will allow them to pay for the expenses in their lifestyle. But Robert calls this the rat race, and people are trying to escape this race for their entire lives just by working their 9-to-5 job, exchanging time for money, and never actually achieve financial freedom. But with endless bills to be paid, inflation happening, and very small advancement in a 9-to-5 job, it's actually going to be very difficult to live on your own terms in the future. And so the whole premise of this book is saying that the rich think differently, and they try and find different ways to make money. The rich normally have multiple sources of income, and these could be through starting a business and operating that, through your investment income, as well as through passive income. So the key point you need to gather here is essentially that the rich have multiple sources of income, while the poor and the middle class generally only have their 9-to-5 job to support their lifestyle expenses. And eventually, once the rich have put in the initial work to develop these sources of income, it's actually passive from there on, so they don't actually have to work for their money, and their money works for itself. Alright, so the second big concept in Rich Dad, Poor Dad is the difference between assets and liabilities. So Robert defines the difference between assets and liabilities by saying that assets essentially put money into your pocket, while liabilities take money out of your pocket. So obviously that's a very dumbed down and simplified version of assets and liabilities, so let me give you an example of each. So buying a real estate investment property would be considered buying an asset, and that is because you can generate rental income from that investment property, and that would be money going straight into your pocket. On the other hand, purchasing a brand new vehicle would be considered a liability because this depreciates over time. As well, you have a lot of maintenance costs and gas to keep the thing running. And so if you take the difference between your assets and your liabilities, you're going to come up with your net worth. And naturally, the rich are going to be investing a lot more in assets than liabilities to be able to build up their net worth. And once the rich invest in these assets, they will use the income generated from these assets to pay for their lifestyle and all of their expenses, while the poor and middle class will still be using their 9-to-5 job to support their lifestyle. And the best part about owning assets that have income generated from them is that you actually don't have to work for that money. As long as you put the money into that asset, it's going to be free-flowing cash flow. Alright guys, moving on to the third key point of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that is to mind your own business. Robert says, and I quote, "To become financially secure, a person needs to mind their own business." But what exactly does he mean by this? Regardless of whether you own your own business, have a 9-to-5 job, or don't even have a job at all, you can still mind your own business, and I'm about to explain how. Essentially, it means to operate your own personal finances like a business would. Businesses are always trying to create value for their shareholders and build up the business even bigger, and you can do exactly this by building up your asset column. Once a dollar ends up going into your asset column, never even think about taking it out, because your money will work for you just like an employee, except it's going to be working 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. Basically, what you want to do is keep feeding your asset column so it grows bigger and bigger and bigger, up until the point where you can support your lifestyle with all of the income generated from those assets. Now, another way to mind your own business would actually be through starting a side hustle that can generate a little bit more income on the side to be able to feed your asset column even further, even while you're working your 9-to-5 job. By doing this, it will allow you to achieve financial freedom so much faster than the others that are actually stuck in the rat race for the rest of their lives. And guys, once you have built up your asset column to the point where it's massive, you can actually reap the rewards for years and even generations to come just from the income generated from those assets. So this next important point here originally came from The Richest Man in Babylon, the book, but Robert actually talks about this too, and that is to pay yourself first. Paying yourself first will truly distinguish the difference between the actions of the rich and those of the poor. Essentially, paying yourself first means that as soon as you get that paycheck in your bank account, you're automatically diverting a lot of that money to your investment account or your savings account. And for example, if this is automatically being deposited into your account from your employer, you should set something up on automatic deposit to automatically have that money go into your savings or investment account without you even knowing about it. That way you can ensure that you're consistently saving the same amount and investing the same amount every single month. Basically, you need to be selfish and have self-discipline when it comes to your own money. Otherwise, you'll always be paying others first through bill payments, entertainment, and other expenses in your life that really should be going towards you first, and then the rest of your money goes towards those expenses. And of course, by doing this, this will allow you to build up your asset column so much more quickly and have a huge base in the future. Now, obviously, this was a very simple concept that I talked about, but in the long run, it's going to benefit you substantially because you can keep yourself accountable with your money. All right, guys, the fifth and final point that I gathered from this book is that financial literacy is absolutely key. The most powerful asset that you're ever going to own in your life is actually right here, and it can generate an infinite return on investment. It is important to not only learn through reading, but also through mentors and experiences that can lead you the way to financial freedom. And without actually putting an effort towards learning about financial concepts, you're never going to get out of the situation that you're in. And if you're currently poor, you're always going to be poor if you never learn about the rich concepts. This can be explained more clearly by the following. In the book, Robert talks about how those who don't have a good understanding of financial concepts and those who are in a bad situation financially will not benefit from more money in their lives. In other words, more money will not solve your money problems. This is simply because the poor mindset is shifted more towards buying depreciating liabilities rather than appreciating assets and income generating assets. And this is exactly why the poor will always stay poor no matter how much money they receive. Now, on the other hand, the rich will always be trying to improve their knowledge about investing and financial concepts so that they can build up their asset column and eventually become financially free. All right, guys, so with that being said, you might be wondering what is my opinion of the book and do I agree with all of the concepts? Do I think it's worth buying? So I just want to start by saying that I think this book is excellent in the fact that it can shift your mindset from the poor to the rich mindset and the way that rich people think. You begin to understand the basic concepts of financial literacy and what assets are versus liabilities and what the rich purchase. Now, do I think this book is directly applicable in your life once you're done reading it? Absolutely not. Out of the many great examples that Robert Kiyosaki provides in this book, he doesn't go into the details, for instance, about real estate investing or buying IPO stocks. So yes, if you do want to be able to apply these concepts in the investing sphere, you're going to have to do your own research about real estate investing or IPO stuff just to get into the details and understand what exactly you're getting into. Now, a way that you could do this is by reading The Intelligent Investor, which is related to the stock market. Or you could also watch YouTube channels like my own and learn more into the specifics about investing. And again, this is exactly the reason why Robert stresses financial literacy in your life, because you have to dig into those details and understand the nitty-gritty stuff. Overall, thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video or gathered any value whatsoever, just smash the like button down below. I would love that. And if you haven't already, just be sure to subscribe down below. I'm putting out content weekly about investing, personal finance, and business. And so I'll see you in the next one.